This is verse 32 of the 5th chapter, the Gospel of Matthew. We're in the midst of Jesus' treatment of the 7th commandment, the prohibition against committing adultery. He's, of course, already dealt with the matter of lusting being a form of the commission of that crime, and then he also now introduces the question of divorce, and noting the Old Testament rule that a writing of divorce should be given to a woman, and actually under the Old Testament law that was viewed as a bit of a charity, you might say, a kind of a benefit to the woman to show that she was unattached for whatever benefit that may provide for her. But Jesus, of course, cuts much more deeply, getting to the very core idea of the sanctity of the marriage relationship. So again, he sets himself in contrast to the Old Testament rule, but I, postpositive but I, and of course the I, with emphasis here, is to distinguish what Jesus is saying from what they've heard before. So I with emphasis lego, from lego I say, first person singular, present active indicative, but I say who men, indirect object, dative plural of the second person pronoun, I say to you, hoti, that. The conjunction pos, the singular here, pos ho, every one, all the, we would say literally, every one that, comes over into English that way. And then apoluon, this present active participle, masculine singular nominative, every one who puts away, literally apoluo is to dismiss. Of course, in this sense, it means to divorce. Everyone who gives a note of dismissal to, or divorces, or separates from. Tain, the accusative feminine article, with gunaika, the woman, literally autu of him, whoever divorces the wife of him. And then the exception here, parektos. This means except. It's a preposition. Takes the genitive, so we have the genitive form of logu here, except for the word. Literally, the sense of it, of course, is the explanation, the reason, the cause would be the idea. Logic derives from the word logos, and so except for the logic of, or the cause of, porneos. Porneia, of course, represents some form of sexual immorality. It's a broad word, and in this case, it would be inclusive of adultery or any form of sexual immorality, I suppose, that is in mind here. So whoever, I say to you, whoever separates from the wife, the woman, except in the case of sexual immorality, poie, from poieo, to make or to do, in this case to make, third person singular, present active indicative, makes, autain, the direct object, her, the feminine, accusative, singular of the feminine pronoun, makes her, moikuthenai. Moikuo is the word, first person singular would be I commit adultery. You'll notice this is the aorist passive infinitive, so it's the idea of having adultery be committed to you in a literal sense, or having been adulterated, you might say. We wouldn't ordinarily translate it that way, but to fall into the condition of being one who has committed adultery is the notion. The passive is interesting in that connection. So, except for the cause of immorality, becomes an adulterer, or has that condition upon them. Kai, and then the final phrase, hos ian, whoever, relative pronoun with the ian, which takes the subjunctive, and whoever, apalelumenein. This is also from apoluo, the same word that we had up here. However, this is, of course, the participles. It's a perfect passive participle, feminine singular accusative. So whoever, the verb here is gamese, from gamao, to marry. So whoever marries, this is the subjunctive, which goes along with the an. So whoever marries the one, this is the feminine, so it's referring presumably to the woman. Whoever marries the one who has been divorced, who has been separated, and so on. And then moikuo, again, this word, this is third person singular, present passive indicative, becomes an adulterer, commits adultery. It's in the passive once again. to suggest the idea of a sort of falling into a state or a condition of being an adulterer. So it's a very strict standard, of course, that Jesus imposes here. And in the first century, there was a fairly widespread practice along these lines, and this, of course, would come as a rather sharp critique of such practice in the ancient world, not to mention in the modern world.